I tell you, the guy that I talked to the other day is a very different person than the person I knew since '93 and that I worked with several years ago at Fox. It's not the same person, and it was troubling. And I say this with sincerity. I'm concerned for him.
It was a firestorm, an absolute knockdown, drag-out showdown between Tucker Carlson and U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, last week on a podcast that lasted 2 hours and 45 minutes, in which Tucker Carlson laid out lie after smear, after slur, after innuendo, after allegation against Huckabee himself, against President Trump, against the Trump administration, against Israel, against the Jews, against Christians who love Israel and believe there's a biblical basis for that. It was unbelievable. And today on Inside the Epicenter, we're going to talk in an exclusive interview with U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee. Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg, founder and president of the Joshua Fund, a ministry to bless Israel and her neighbors, and ministry to educate and mobilize Christians in the United States and Canada and all over the world to understand God's love and heart for Israel. Israel is a sinful nation like any nation, but God does have a love and a heart for a people that he chose for himself and whom he loves, and has said in Jeremiah, through the prophet Jeremiah, I have loved you with an everlasting love, and therefore I've drawn you with loving kindness. The Father sent the Son, Jesus, to be the Messiah. Where? In Israel, right? And as a Jew. And Jesus said his mission was to be a shepherd to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And of course, Jesus commanded his own, and not only commanded, but instructed and trained and deployed his own disciples to love and show compassion to the lost sheep of the house of Israel as well. And that's part of what the Joshua Fund does, is to educate and mobilize Christians to understand God's love and heart for Israel, but not just Israel, also for the Palestinians who are suffering, especially the Palestinians in Gaza. How do we have sympathy and compassion for them? How can we be helpful? How can we be a blessing as followers of Jesus, loving our neighbors and loving our enemies? And as well as throughout the Arab and Muslim world. So that's what this ministry does, the Joshua Fund. And Inside the Epicenter is our flagship educational project, a podcast that's in the top 1% of all podcasts in the world. But why? Why is it interesting to people? Because it gives you an opportunity to understand what does God say about Israel, but also how is Israel and Jews and followers of Jesus who love Israel, who are sometimes called Christian Zionists. We're in the news a lot these days, and there's a lot of allegations and a lot of attacks against Israel. And this is a program that deals with those things and tries to help people understand and get their questions answered. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. Lynn is in Israel right now, as Israel is on high alert. And I'm hoping that she can make it to a set of board meetings that we've got next week in the Washington, D.C. area. I just arrived here. I was speaking at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in Nashville, and at something called the Judeo-Christian Zionist Congress, also held in Nashville. Very interesting meetings, very interesting opportunities to speak and present and speak to the media and meet with Christian leaders and Jewish leaders from all over the world and all over the United States and Canada. And we're going to deal with all of those things and walk you through more of that in episodes to come. But I just want to give you an update that right now, as I record this, Lynn is in Israel and she is hoping to come. But at any moment, it really is believed that President Trump is about to make his decision and is almost certainly going to order massive military strikes against the Iranian regime. It is coming down to a sense where most observers believe that war is imminent. And so really appreciate your prayers for Lynn, for our family, for our Joshua Fund team on the ground doing humanitarian relief and caring and ministering to the ministers in Israel, pastors and other leaders and their wives and their teams. So appreciate your prayers for that. Appreciate your prayers for President Trump and his team to have wisdom to know what to do and when to do it. protection and wisdom for Israeli leaders and the Israeli nation, and mercy on the people of Iran. So that's a lot going on, and but I want to focus today on my exclusive conversation by phone this morning, me in Washington and Ambassador Huckabee in Jerusalem, because this is his first. It was my first opportunity. He's done a few other interviews, but this was my first opportunity to talk to him about all the avalanche of lies that Tucker, just poured out against him and against Israel and against Jews, against Christians, against President Trump himself. So we get into all of it, and I want to share that with you. I also want to let you know right up front, just before we go to the interview, that we are inviting you to come to Israel. You're like, what? Are you crazy? Well, not this week, not next week. Okay, we might be at war again. But if this war happens, the war will be over in the next month or so. We'll see. We'll keep you posted, right here on Inside the Epicenter, where so many people are focusing on right now. But the point is, next April 2027, the Joshua Fund will be doing our first prayer and vision tour of Israel that we've done since before COVID, right? That's how long it's been, the global COVID pandemic, and then 2.5 years of war. It's been brutal. We haven't been able to bring large groups of people. We've done some small delegations and solidarity missions, but we're inviting you now for our first prayer and vision tour of Israel. Come with us in the spring of 2027, and part of that will be an Epicenter Summit, where Ambassador Mike Huckabee will be one of the keynote speakers, and as will Israeli President Isaac Herzog, who you're going to hear referenced in this conversation today, and wonderful Bible teachers and pastors, Bible teacher like Anne Graham Lotz, and pastors and ministry leaders like Pastor Greg Laurie and Pastor Skip Heitzig, Pastor Jack Graham, who is based in Dallas and was the president of the Southern Baptist Convention a number of years ago. I will be speaking, and there will be others announced as we get closer, but we would love for you to come. You can find out all about that at joshuafund.com, joshuafund.com. And if you're a pastor or ministry leader who are thinking, wow, that's great that you, Joel, that you and Lynn and the team are sort of encouraging people to come back. Could I bring a tour? Yes, we would love it if you brought a tour. Maybe it's a small tour, 10, 15, 20 people. Maybe it's a full bus, 50. Maybe it's several buses. But you can learn at joshuafund.com. Just go up to the sections, where it's like about, and it talks about, tours that we give, and it'll have all the details. And we'll have a link in the show notes as well for you to go directly to where you can find out information about coming on the Joshua Fund tour or organizing your own tour to come to Israel. We would love for you to do that. And now would be the time to plan. Yes, it's 14 months or so until we'll do this Joshua Fund tour and Epicenter Summit. But the good news is this gives you time to think this through, to plan, to figure out how many people you would like to bring, and to work out all the details and start inviting people. So I encourage you to do that. We think it's so important, and as more and more attacks militarily, but also in social media and on broadcast media and podcasts, as there's so much attack against Israel, against Jews, against Israel's neighbors, but also against Christians who have this love and a heart of compassion for both Israel and her neighbors. As that keeps happening, it's more important than ever that people come. And we're hoping for 3,000 Christians to come to the Epicenter Summit. It'll be the largest Christian conference in years, since well before the COVID pandemic. So hope that's helpful. Well, let's take a quick break, and then we'll go right into the interview with U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. But don't go away. We'll be right back on Inside the Epicenter. Ambassador, you find yourself in quite a firestorm. One of the most fascinating and I think important interviews that I've ever seen you give is to Tucker Carlson. So I want to begin with his statement that he says, I don't oppose Israel. And you leaned forward and you said, you hide that very well. Let's just start there. Do you believe him?
It's very difficult for me to believe that he loves Israel. It would be like saying, I love my wife, but I'm beating the daylights out of her every night. Because he didn't have anything really good to say about Israel.
Yeah.
And even more troubling than our conversation, which was certainly not one of affection for Israel, in his recorded sort of intro to our interview that he recorded after the interview had happened, he made some very disparaging comments that I found incredibly off-putting. For example, he said Israel is the most violent country in the world.
Right.
That is demonstrably untrue. It is an incredibly peaceful country. I know that would sound strange to some people because all they hear about is Israel is at war. Israel has a lot of conflicts. But Israel does not have conflicts so much within the Israeli world. They do have conflicts with people who are out to kill them. They defend themselves, as any person would. But the idea that it is a violent society, as you know, Joel, this is a place where you can walk the streets at night and not feel in any way threatened or intimidated.
Absolutely.
Would feel far safer walking around in Jerusalem at night than one would feel in New York or Washington or Detroit or Chicago. So I found that very just stunning. And he made the comment about the airport lounge and that it was dirty. Well, actually, that's one of the nicest airport lounges, and I've been in a bunch of them all over the world. I have often told the management there, this is maybe the nicest one I have ever been in. I don't even know where he would get that because it was absolutely immaculate. And, he made comments about how that his passport was confiscated. That wasn't true. He was sitting there eating snacks and having time to relax. And the way it works in the executive lounge, it's a very expensive process. You pay dearly for this privilege, but they don't confiscate your passport. They take it so that you don't have to go and stand there and have someone go through it and look at it and make sure that it's okay. Someone does that for you while you can enjoy a snack or a beverage. It was that kind of thing that I found very, very stunning. And again, he continually talked about how badly Christians are treated in Israel. And all of us who are Christians in Israel are scratching our heads saying, what is he talking about? It is not like that. And I even mentioned to him in the course of the interview, I play my bass guitar in my church band every Sunday. People know I'm a Christian. I get treated very well, not just by other Christians. I get treated very well by the Jewish community, by people who are Muslims. I don't sense any hostility or animosity toward me because I'm a Christian.
Not at all. And I say this as an Israeli evangelical from a Jewish background, that a lot of that came up as well. And I appreciated how you tried to refute lie and slur and innuendo and allegation after another. Yes, my experience has been that Israel is one of the freest places. It is the freest place in the Middle East, bar none, to be a follower of Jesus Christ, not just in your heart, but in your public practice and your conversation and your ministry. So I agree with you. There seem to be two themes that I found as we've been covering, and it's 2.5 hours of one lie after another. So we're going to work our way through a lot of them, but I want to deal with it thematically for a moment. He is attacking you as being an ineffective and disloyal ambassador. He repeatedly accused you of caring more about protecting Israel than doing your job as a faithful, loyal American citizen, much less ambassador of the government and representative of the president. This came up over and over and over again. And then secondly, attacking Israel as a country that harbors the sickest form of sexual predators, and that the president of Israel himself is directly linked to the life and crimes of the worst sexual trafficker and predator that we've ever heard of, Jeffrey Epstein. So let's start with his attacks against the president and Israeli society on this issue of sexual crimes. This was a theme early. He was supposed to talk to you about Christian Zionism. You guys did get there, but this was really right up front. How do you not know about this? How are you not talking about this? How are you not confronting President Herzog? So let's start on that one, because you rightly expressed incredulity. This doesn't sound like Herzog. And now President Herzog has said it's flat out 100% not true.
Well, first of all, it was reckless on Tucker's part to even bring Herzog into that, because he had the last name, but not anything else. No indication that it was Isaac Herzog, who is the current president.
Right.
Secondly, President Herzog, turns out, was in Tel Aviv speaking in front of 1,000 people that day. He has never met him, never been in the room with him, never had any dealings with him whatsoever, even so much as a phone call. In the interview, you may recall that Tucker said, well, why don't you ask him? Are you going to ask him? And I said, yeah, I will. And the very next morning I did. I have regular conversations with President Herzog. He is a very close friend. He was appalled by such a scurrilous accusation. Turns out that a photo that Tucker apparently referenced or thought was real was an AI-generated photo. And a month ago, the person who put it out there admitted that it was a fake,
right,
and apologized for it. I feel like President Herzog has grounds for a serious libel and defamation lawsuit, and he very well may pursue that, and I frankly hope he does, because that was an incredibly bad thing to do to a public official, and accuse them of essentially being a pedophile. There's just nothing that is more disgusting than that, especially without basis, and he could have found out if he wanted to. The idea that he also brought up this person who was arrested in Nevada.
Right.
I had heard vaguely about the case. Well, I found out later, because I checked into it, something he could have done in 5 minutes if he wanted to. Why it even came into our interview, I have no idea. I thought it was a rabbit hole that was totally off the topic. But the reason that there was nothing about it that was making a big splash is because it wasn't a federal charge. It's a local charge against this gentleman. He did not abscond. They knew he was coming back to Israel. He paid his bond. He is going to have a hearing in, I think, March, and a trial in probably April. If it's necessary, he will go back. They know exactly where he is. He went back to Israel with the full permission of the Henderson, Nevada Police Department and the prosecutor. So there is nothing untoward about how this has been handled. Israel is not shielding him. Israel is not protecting him. The state of Israel has nothing to do with the case. This is an individual. He's been charged. I find it interesting that in Tucker's world, he's all about being Christian, and yet, look, this guy may be guilty. I don't know. He certainly has been charged, but in the American system of jurisprudence, he is innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt by a jury of peers. That has not happened. He has been charged. There are allegations. Tucker should have said he is an alleged pedophile, not that he is one. And how come I didn't know anything about it? I don't know about it because, frankly, it has nothing to do with my being ambassador of the United States to Israel.
Right. Well,
let me just mention this one thing, because
sure,
it's very important. You mentioned how he was saying that I was ineffective. I don't care what he's
not just ineffective. That you're being disloyal to the United States and to your role as ambassador.
And I think that's, again, demonstrably and provably untrue. But honestly, his opinion of me, I can live with. Here's what I can't live with. I highly take umbrage of the repeated insinuations and inferences, if not outright declarations, that President Trump is so weak that he is being led around by the Israeli government, and that he's not really in charge, that the Israelis are, and that Pete Hegseth is not in charge of the Department of War, that the Israelis are in charge of the U.S. Department of War. It's one thing to say that he doesn't like the job I'm doing,
right,
fine. But for him to make these accusations about President Trump, I find that inexcusable. I find it very damaging to America First movement, of which I feel a part of, damaging to what I believe to be the greatest president, not only in my lifetime, but certainly the greatest president that has ever led U.S.-Israel relationships. And he repeatedly disparaged my president, yes, my boss. But this is hurtful to the movement, the party, and the United States of America. And he recently said that he hates the Republican Party. I'm thinking, Tucker, you do know that the head of the Republican Party is President Trump.
Right.
So if you hate the Republican Party and you hate that the Justice Department isn't doing things that you think they ought to do, and that the administration is failing, and that it's wasting money and not putting the right priorities, that's all criticisms of President Trump. I hope they quit letting him into the White House, because, quite frankly, this is a person who is doing serious, significant damage to President Trump and to the administration.
I agree. I have to ask you one more question, because this is part of the firestorm. Tucker went and took a different tactic than I thought. Rather than sort of spending most of his time on whether Israel has the right to live in the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, he widened the aperture to talk about the biblical grant of Israel to the Jewish people to have a much wider landmass. And while you sort of agreed, yeah, that is in the Bible, and maybe someday that may in fact happen, you specifically said that that's not something that's going on right now. That's not something Israel wants. And you didn't even accept the premise that it would be legitimate for Israel to try to take over the entire Middle East. But that has led to a firestorm from Arab countries, including from Saudi Arabia. You want to take just a moment to address that again, because I think he was trying to, in a sense, entrap you to that you, as the U.S. ambassador, are endorsing U.S. foreign policy to support some sort of long-term, possibly eschatological fulfillment of things that didn't have anything to do with what he asked you to talk about, which was, is Israel allowed to live safely in its current borders?
Yeah, I think what I would do is refer people to the full transcript or the entire interview, everything that I said in that segment, because he cut it off and took a portion of it. And that's like me saying, hey, did you see that hockey game that the U.S. played against Canada in the finals of the Olympics, but then not show the final 30 seconds and present that as having been the hockey game? Well, if you missed the end of it, you missed the whole thing.
Right.
And I would say that if people missed the full context of what I said, they missed the whole thing, and therefore they might not understand. So I would refer people to the document itself or to the tape, but not just to the portion that he played in order to get a point, but rather to the full context. And I'm very comfortable with what was said and how it was said. But that's one of the things that was very troubling about the way Tucker conducted it. And, he even acknowledged that he and I have known each other for 33 years or more. And we worked together at Fox for 6.5 years in New York.
Right.
And I tell you, the guy that I talked to the other day is a very different person than the person I knew since 93 and that I worked with several years ago at Fox. It's not the same person, and it was troubling. And I say this with sincerity. I'm concerned for him.
Yeah,
I really
me
am.
Too.
I am concerned for him because I did not see a person who was comfortable in his own skin, who had come not to have a thoughtful conversation. And if you think about it, Joel, Tucker, there's been some analysis of how much time he talked versus how much time he let me talk, right, versus some of the most ridiculous people that he has had on his show. He would turn them loose and give them 65% of the time. He gave me 30-something% of the time because he talked over me, interrupted me. When he had Nick Fuentes on, the little Nazi, he let him roll. When he had Daryl Cooper, the guy that said that Winston Churchill really was the bad guy in World War II and Hitler wasn't that bad, he let him talk. Right. When he had the president of Iran on, he let him roll. When he had Vladimir Putin on, he didn't correct him or push back. The only two people that I can think of that he's pushed back on are Ted Cruz and me. Now, if he loves Israel, then the two people that he had on to talk about Israel, he was argumentative, he was belligerent, he continually took us on rabbit holes that really made no sense to the thing, like should Jews be DNA tested?
Oh my gosh, that was repulsive, actually.
Totally scratching my head.
So, and on that one, I just have to say,
Americans be DNA tested? Is that his next move? Is to say that everyone in America? Does that mean that, my family needs to go back to England where our ancestry was if we can't prove that we're Native Americans? None of that made sense. It just didn't make sense.
It only makes sense when you conclude, and we'll wrap here. I appreciate your time, but it only makes sense when we conclude. The only way to conclude it logically is he's not interested in learning. He hates Israel, and he has come to hate any Christian person that loves Israel and claims a biblical basis for that love. Because that level of attack on sexual predators and that Israel harbors them, that the president of Israel was close to one, all of that is those are not rabbit trails if that's his actual point. And that, I think, is the preponderance of the evidence is that he's making lie after lie, even though you did better job. And I love Ted Cruz. You have much more experience in this zone, plus the theology, but he didn't care. And his 17 million people are hearing the lies before they're even hearing your excellent refutations.
Well, it's an interesting study of seeing a person sort of disintegrate and go down spiraling into the drain. And I hate to see that because he's talented and he's smart. He's not a stupid person. Yeah. But in this case, it's not about ignorance or stupidity. This is about a person who has a very fixated agenda that he is upset with Israel. And I don't know if someone, maybe he was here at one time in his life and an Israeli bus bumped him in the backside and he's never gotten over it. Maybe he didn't get a non-kosher meal on El Al, and he feels very much upset by that.
Well, he accused Prime Minister Netanyahu in his prologue of targeting two of his family members, and then he said, "I'm not going to get into that." Well, that is the first time I've ever heard a hint of a motive. We'll have to see. I'm not believing much of anything he says these days, but I want to close with this. I agree with you, Ambassador. I'm worried for him. People who hate Israel and hate Christians who love Israel, they come and go throughout history. But as Christians, we do need to be praying for him. This is something that's not well, and it's becoming not just obsessive, sort of Israel derangement syndrome and Christian Zionist derangement syndrome, but it looks pathological. But I'm trying not to be angry. I'm concerned because of his influence, but I'm worried, and I appreciate you saying that as well. And let's encourage Christians and others to be praying for him. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it enormously, and I look forward to seeing you soon when I get back to Israel. It could be a very interesting few weeks ahead of us.
I appreciate it. Be careful. Be safe. See you soon.
You too. God bless. Well, I'm very grateful to Ambassador Mike Huckabee for that interview. He's been a dear friend for many, many years. He's such a strong evangelical Christian. He loves the United States. He's a very faithful and loyal ambassador to the United States. He's a very effective one, too. And that's why the accusations against him that he's not really serving his country well, that he's not dealing with these issues well, it's so wrong. And he also was willing to sit down with Tucker Carlson for about 2.5 hours and walk through every topic that Tucker wanted to talk about. But it was clear that Tucker didn't really want to listen. He didn't really want to learn. He was there to accuse, to lie, to slur, to slander. And I'm very concerned. You heard that part of the conversation right at the end that Ambassador Huckabee says he's worried for Tucker, and I'm worried as well for his heart, for his soul. I believe God can change people, and that's why we need to be praying that God would have mercy on this man who has made it his life mission now to attack and attack Jews and Christians and attack the land and people and concept of Israel. I would encourage you to also go to the show notes. There are several articles that All Israel News has done, that I've done, that kind of walk through some of the other major points in the Tucker showdown firestorm with Huckabee that didn't get to or didn't get into as much detail with here in this interview. So I hope that's helpful to you. I also want to encourage you to go to the show notes to see the link to learning more about the Epicenter Summit, April 7th, 2027, to 14 months from now. Plenty of time to pray, to plan, to save, and prepare to come to the Epicenter Summit. We hope that there'll be 3,000 Christians there. Ambassador Mike Huckabee, President Isaac Herzog, and Lynn and I will be among them. So we really encourage you to learn more about it and to sign up for the Joshua Fund Tour. All the details, prices, every detail is right there. And you and your family and your small group Bible study and some friends can all look at it. And I hope that you will make plans to join us. We would absolutely be so joyful and honored to have you and to answer your questions and spend time with you and show you the land and people that we love and to pray for both sides. So I hope that's helpful. I also encourage you to, if you can, to make a donation, even a monthly donation to the Joshua Fund. The ministry needs are real and they are expanding. They're more than ever. And we appreciate any financial gift that you can make. You can go to joshuafund.com and right up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see the donate button. Just click there. It doesn't mean you have donated yet. It just gives you a chance to look at and see all the details and what your options are. It's a very simple process. It's tax deductible in the United States and Canada, and it's secure to give online. So thank you for considering that. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Inside the Epicenter. Please keep praying for Israel and our neighbors, for Iran, for the United States, for our leadership, because we are very likely in a war, a major war, maybe the most decisive and important war of our lifetimes in the Middle East, inside the epicenter. And it could start any moment, even before this podcast is posted. So thank you. Grateful for you guys. And I look forward to being with Lynn and being with you on the next episode of Inside the Epicenter. I'm Joel Rosenberg. On your left, you'll find some videos we've chosen specifically for you. We look forward to partnering with you to bless Israel and her neighbors in the name of Jesus.